The sacrificial anode on a SeaDoo is designed to reduce corrosion to the jet pump and other metal components on the watercraft. They're typically made out of zinc, which is a softer metal that will corrode before the jet pump and other metal components. The service manual recommends inspecting once per month, or even more often when used in salt water, and recommends replacing when it's been worn down by corrosion by at least 50%. Unfortunately, on the Spark, it's extremely difficult to access above the ride plate to the left of the jet pump directly behind the flush connector. The easiest way to change it out is by taking off the entire jet pump. The tools that you need are a 10mm wrench, 10mm and 13mm sockets, deep well socket at least for the 10mm, a universal joint adapter, at least 8 inches in extensions, a ratchet, a torque wrench capable of 16 foot-pounds, and a slotted screwdriver or quarter-inch socket. If you have a Spark with IBR, you'll also need a 13mm wrench. If you have the 3-up model, the socket and ratchet will need to be quarter-inch drive and preferably a ratcheting wrench to speed things up. The supplies you'll need, in addition to a new sacrificial anode, which I'll link to in the description below, are paper towels, BRP triple guard grease, brake cleaner or BRP pulley flange cleaner, Scotch-Brite or a small wire brush, and optionally new bolts with Scotch grip for the jet pump assembly or thread locker to reapply to the threads, and an O-ring for the exhaust cooler line. Let's get started by removing the IBR connecting arm. If you don't have IBR, use the chapter markers below to skip ahead to the steering cable. Use the 13mm wrench and 13mm socket to take out the connecting arm bolt. If you have the 3-up version, you'll have to use a quarter-inch drive ratchet to have enough room for it to fit on the nut on the inside. For the 2-up version, you should be able to use the ratchet on the bolt on the outside. Now that the gate is disconnected from the connecting arm, use a 13mm wrench or 13mm ratchet for the 2-up version to take out the bolts on each side of the IBR gate. Then slide the gate out of the way and set aside. Make sure that you don't lose the spacers on the connecting arm or IBR gate pivot points. Now to disconnect the steering cable, turn the nozzle to the left to gain access to the steering linkage. Using a 10mm wrench and ratchet, take out the bolt connecting the nozzle to the steering cable. Lastly, before taking off the jet pump, disconnect the baler hose. The hose clamp can be removed with either a slotted screwdriver or quarter-inch socket. Once the hose clamp is removed, the hose can slide off of the siphon tube, or in my case, the siphon tube may just slide out of the jet pump. Now with the jet pump controls disconnected, take out the 3 13mm bolts holding the jet pump assembly on the watercraft. You'll need at least 8 inches of extensions to be able to reach these bolts, as well as a U-joint adapter for the 2 lower bolts. With these 3 bolts removed, the jet pump assembly can be carefully removed. SeaDoo recommends utilizing the engine alignment plate to hold the drive shaft in place temporarily while the jet pump is removed to avoid damaging the oil seal where the drive shaft exits the engine. The wear ring may come out with the jet pump, or in my case, be left in the hull. Simply pull it and the de-imprint seal out. Take a minute to inspect the wear ring and replace if it's cracked or if there's significant scoring. A worn wear ring will cause poor takeoff, like a car spinning its tires. Now for the anode itself, use the 10mm deep well socket and ratchet to take off the locking nut. For some reason, there's a very long bolt, so it may take a while. Once you have the nut and anode off, clean the surface behind the old anode with some Scotch-Brite or a small wire brush. You want the new anode to have a good connection to the metal in the SeaDoo for it to be able to protect from galvanic corrosion. Once you have the new anode installed and the 10mm nut tightened, it's time to prep for reinstalling the jet pump assembly. Using BRP pulley flange cleaner or any brake parts cleaner and a paper towel, clean off the old grease from the drive shaft splines. Make sure not to spray any cleaner on the hull or any plastic components. Also, while you have the jet pump removed, take a minute to inspect the IBR boot and the exhaust cooler line O-ring. Replace the boot if you see any cracking in the rubber or feel water inside. The shop manual recommends to replace the exhaust cooler O-ring whenever you take off the jet pump, but it should be fine to reuse as long as it appears to be in good shape. Moving to the jet pump assembly, unscrew the impeller boot. This is a left-handed thread, so turn clockwise to remove. Then use the cleaner and a paper towel to clean all the grease from inside the impeller splines. Also use a paper towel without cleaner to wipe down the inside of the rubber impeller boot. With the old grease cleaned out, reapply new BRP triple guard grease to the impeller boot, the inside impeller splines, as well as the drive shaft splines. If you have it, the shop manual calls for Loctite 577 thread sealant on the impeller boot threads before reinstalling on the impeller. Before reinstalling the wear ring, make sure that the neoprene seal is correctly installed on the small groove on one end of the wear ring. Then with the neoprene seal up, line up the wear ring notch with the top bolt hole on the jet pump and press it gently into place. The first rib should be flush with the jet pump and the impeller should spin freely with about a fingernail's width clearance. Take the jet pump assembly and carefully slide it back into position. Pay special attention to the steering cable that it's routed through the opening on the right side of the jet pump and the IBR connecting arm that is on the top of the left side. With it about 4 inches away from the bracket, it's time to guide the drive shaft into the impeller. I found the easiest way to do this is simply to slide one hand between the hull and the wear ring and carefully guide it into the impeller boot. Once it's in the boot, continue to slide the jet pump assembly into place. You may have to gently rotate the jet pump side to side when it gets close to seat the splines of the drive shaft into the impeller. You should feel once they line up and the whole assembly will slide into position. The shop manual calls for new M8 jet pump housing retaining screws, but if you choose to reuse the old bolts, just apply some thread locker like Loctite 243 before reinstalling. Get the top bolt started first, then install the other 2 bolts. Get all 3 of them snug and then torque each to 16 foot-pounds. Reconnect the baler hose on the top of the jet pump and then the steering linkage. For the steering cable, the bolt and washer will go through the nozzle first, then through the cable end. The other washer and lock nut go on the bottom. Tighten them with a 10mm socket and wrench. If you don't have IBR, that's all there is to it. But now for the IBR bucket, apply some Loctite 243 thread locker on the side bolts. Verify the spacers are inserted correctly into the IBR gate pivot points. And with a gate correctly positioned on the inside guides, get the pivot bolts started first. Use a 13mm socket or wrench to tighten them. If you have the 2-up version and are able to get a torque wrench on them, the correct torque is also 16 foot-pounds. The last thing to reattach is the IBR connecting arm. The bolt and self-locking nut are both 13mm. After reattaching everything, crank up the engine and briefly press the throttle to raise the IBR bucket. Now turn off the engine and make sure the IBR bucket returns to the downward position. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and check out my SeaDoo playlist for all my SeaDoo related videos.